Chapter 1. The One Who Wanted to Leave. Somewhere in the room around you, the day has finally gone still. Maybe it took its time getting here. Maybe there is still a faint hum of it left somewhere behind your eyes, the leftover motion of a mind that has been moving all day and has not quite remembered how to stop. That is all right. You do not have to stop it by force. Stillness is not something you make happen. It is something that arrives, on its own, once you stop giving it reasons to stay away, and it is already on its way to you now, quietly, whether you can feel it yet or not. Let yourself be held by whatever is holding you. The mattress beneath you, the pillow under your head, the particular weight of your own body finally allowed to be heavy. Notice the small places still holding tension and let them go, one at a time, not because you are trying, but because there is nothing left tonight that any of that holding could accomplish. Whatever you carried into this hour, you are allowed to set it down at the edge of the bed. It will keep until morning. Almost all of it will turn out not to have needed keeping at all. This is the Lord Inn, and what follows tonight is a long, slow story about a betrayal. Not a loud one, not a crime of passion or rage, committed in a moment of heat, a cold one, planned carefully across a long time, carried out in near silence by someone who had decided, with terrible clarity, that the only way to be free was to do something unforgivable. It is one of the quietest and most consequential acts in the whole of this world's history, and almost everything that comes after it is, in one way or another, an echo of that single cold decision made in the dark. If your eyes close before the end of it, that is not a failure. That is the design. Nothing here needs remembering. It only needs to keep you company while you fall asleep. Tonight the story is about a witch. Not a witch of curses and cauldrons, but something colder and sadder and far more interesting. A young woman born into the highest fate this world can offer, who looked at that fate, understood exactly what it would cost her, and decided she wanted no part of it at all. Her name is Ranni, and she wanted a single thing more than she wanted anything else. More than power, more than love, more than her own family, more even than her own body. She wanted to leave, not to die, to escape entirely from a world she had come to see as a cage, and from the gods who had built that cage and called it a blessing. Wherever you are tonight, let her come to you slowly. She has been planning her escape for a very long time, and she is patient, and there is no hurry in her at all. This is Elden Ring, though not the version made of glinting swords and pale moonlight thrown across a boss arena. This is the version underneath that one, the version made of item descriptions and half-spoken confessions, and the particular loneliness of a woman who trusted almost no one, because almost no one could be trusted with what she meant to do. And it is tonight a story about the price of freedom, which in this world is never small and never paid only by the one who wanted to be free. Ranni wanted to escape her fate. To do it, she had to spend other lives than her own, and she knew it, and she did it anyway, and the story does not let her off the hook for that, and it does not let you hate her for it either. It only asks you to understand. Maybe some part of it will feel familiar, even wrapped in all these strange old names. The feeling of a life laid out for you before you had any say in it, a shape you were expected to fill, a fate assigned rather than chosen. The wish, quiet and stubborn, to step off the path that everyone assumed you would walk, even if stepping off it meant losing things you could never get back. You do not have to be a witch or an Empyrean or anything grand at all for the shape of that wish to feel like your own. If any of it lands somewhere tender in you tonight, let it land gently, and then let it go, the way you are letting go of everything else. This is not a lesson. It is only a story, told slowly, about what it costs to refuse the life you were given, and whether the freedom on the other side of that refusal is worth what you have to pay for it. Let us begin the way Ronnie's own story begins, not with the betrayal, but with the cage. because to understand why she did the unforgivable thing, you first have to understand exactly what she was trying to escape and how gently and how completely it was built to hold her. Chapter 2. The Cage They Called a Blessing. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow all the way down until it is happening without any help from you. To understand Ranni, you have to understand the shape of the world she was born into, and the God at the top of it, and the particular kind of fate that God hands down to the ones it chooses. It is a fate that looks, from the outside, like the greatest gift this world can give. It is a fate that Ranni came to see as a prison, and she was not wrong. At the top of this world's order sits a distant power, a god the golden faithful call the greater will, watching from somewhere far beyond the edges of the sky. It does not rule directly. It rules through a chain of intermediaries and instruments, through trembling fingers that relay its wishes, through a great tree that spreads its influence across the land, through a ring of laws that binds the whole world into a single ordered shape. And it rules, above all, by choosing. Every so often it selects a certain rare kind of person, marks them from birth as special, and sets them on a path toward a destiny they did not ask for and cannot easily refuse. These chosen ones are called Empyreans, and to be born one is to be told, before you have done anything at all, exactly what your life is for. An Empyrean is a vessel. That is the plain and cold truth underneath all the reverence. They are born with the potential to become a god, to ascend, to take up the divine role at the center of the order, and rule as its living deity. This is spoken of as the highest honor imaginable, and in a sense it is, but sit with what it actually means for the person carrying it. From your first breath, your life is not your own. It has a purpose assigned to it by powers you never met, and that purpose is to become a piece of their machine, a new vessel for an old order, a god shaped to the specifications of the God that made you. You are not raised to become yourself. You are raised to become useful at the largest possible scale to a will that sees you as a component rather than a person. The blessing and the cage are the same thing. They always were. And the greater will does not simply announce this fate and leave the chosen to it. It assigns them keepers. Every Empyrean is given a two fingers, one of those trembling messenger hands, to guide them and instruct them, and in truth to watch them, to make sure the vessel matures in the proper direction. And every Empyrean is given something else, stranger and sadder, a shadow-bound beast, a living being bound by fate to serve them, to protect them, and if it ever comes to it, to be the blade that ends them should they stray too far from the path. Think about what that means. The chosen one is given a companion who is also secretly a leash and a knife, a friend who loves them and is fated, in the same breath, to be their potential executioner. This is how gently the cage is built. It does not come with bars. It comes with guardians and guides, and a beloved companion sworn to your service, and every one of them is also a way of making sure you never truly get to choose. This is the first thing this whole night wants you to understand plainly, and it is one of the truest things this world has to teach. Every order produces its own outcasts, and the Golden Order is no exception. But its cruelest trick is subtler than mere exile. It also produces prisoners who do not look like prisoners, people wrapped so thoroughly in honor and blessing and destiny that the cage becomes invisible even to them. The Empyreans are the Golden Order's most exalted children and its most completely owned. They are told they are gods in the making, and they are treated as vessels to be filled. And both of those things are true at once, and the honor is real and the ownership is real, and neither one cancels the other. To be chosen by the greater will is not to be loved by it. It is to be selected and shaped and used. Ranni understood this somewhere deep and early, in a way most of the chosen never let themselves understand at all. Because here is what makes Ranni different from nearly every other Empyrean in this world's long history. She looked at the fate she was handed, the highest honor the order could offer, and instead of accepting it, or striving toward it, or breaking under the weight of it, she began, quietly, to plan her way out of it. She did not want to become a god. She did not want to be a vessel for the greater will's design. She did not want the trembling fingers guiding her, or the beast fated to watch her, or the great warm golden order pressing her gently into the shape it needed. She wanted out. And there was no door, so she decided, with a patience that should frighten you a little, to make one. It is worth pausing to notice how rare that refusal was, because other chosen souls faced the same cage and answered it very differently. There were others marked from birth, as Ranni was marked, set on the same kind of assigned path toward the same kind of assigned destiny. Some of them strove toward it, some endured it, some bent it gently toward their own kinder purposes without ever quite trying to escape the design itself. Ranni is the one who looked at the whole arrangement, not merely her particular fate, but the entire structure of distant gods reaching down to use the chosen as their instruments, and rejected the structure itself. She did not want a kinder cage, or a better place within the design, or a gentler master. She wanted the design gone. That is what sets her apart from nearly every other chosen soul in this world's long history. Most who suffer under a system dream of rising within it, or reforming it, or being treated a little better by it. Ranni dreamed of ending its hold entirely, for herself and, in time, for everyone, and she was cold enough and patient enough to actually pursue that dream all the way to its terrible end. The others accepted the board they were placed on and played their assigned pieces. Ranni decided quietly to overturn the whole table and then spent an age working out exactly how. Sleep well. When we return, we will meet the family Ranni was born into, a proud and sorrowful house of moon and starlight, and the particular griefs that ran through it long before Ranni ever thought of leaving. Chapter 3. The House of the Full Moon. Welcome back. Get comfortable and let everything slow down around you a little further. Before Ranni was a witch, before she was a conspirator, before she was anything the histories would remember, she was a daughter of a particular house, and that house carried its own long sadness, and Ranni grew up inside that sadness the way anyone grows up inside the weather of their childhood home. To understand her, we have to spend a little while with the people who made her. Ranni was born into the Carian royal family, a proud house of sorcerers who ruled a misty region of lakes and glintstone in the west of this world, and whose magic drew not on the golden light of the Erd tree, but on something older and colder and further away, the moon and the stars. This matters more than it first appears. The Carians were part of the Golden Order, bound to it by marriage and alliance, but their power came from a different source entirely, from the distant lights in the night sky, rather than the warm gold of the tree. There was always, in the Carian line, a certain distance from the golden center, a coolness, a gaze turned upward and outward toward the cold clarity of the moon, rather than inward toward the tree's embrace. Ranni was raised in that upward-outward gaze. It shaped her long before she knew what she would do with it. Her mother was Rennala, the queen of the Carian house, a formidable sorceress who ruled the great academy of glintstone learning and held the loyalty of a whole realm. And her father, for a time, was a figure named Radagon, a great red-haired champion who came to the Carian house and wed its queen and gave her children, Ranni, among them. For a while there was something like happiness in the House of the Full Moon, a queen and her consort and their gifted children, a proud sorceress family at the height of its power. But it did not last, and the way it ended left a wound in the house that never fully healed, and Ranni grew up in the shadow of that wound. Radagon left. That is the plain shape of it. He was called away, or chose to go, to the Golden Center, to the queen who ruled the whole world, and he abandoned Rala and the Carian house to do it. The reasons run deep into secrets this telling will only touch tonight. Secrets about who Radagon truly was, and what he was truly bound to. secrets that belong to other knights and other stories. What matters here is the effect. Rinala, the proud queen of the full moon, was left behind by the one she loved, and it broke her. She did not rage or make war or plot revenge. She simply broke, quietly and completely, retreating into her academy, clutching at old memories, unable to move past the moment she was abandoned. By the time most travelers meet her, centuries later, she is a shattered thing, cradling an object that reminds her of what she lost, lost in a grief so old it has become the whole of who she is. Consider what it does to a child, to grow up watching a parent be destroyed by love, to see the queen of your house, the mightiest figure in your whole world, reduced to a broken woman by the simple fact of having been left. Ranni watched her mother love someone completely and be abandoned and never recover. It is not difficult to see how a child raised in that house might come to distrust the warm and binding things: love, devotion, closeness, attachment, the very forces that had unmade her mother. It is not difficult to see how she might come to prize distance instead: coldness, self-possession, the cool clarity of the moon over the warm and dangerous gold of the tree. Ranni's whole eventual philosophy, her longing for distance and separation and freedom from the meddling of others, has its roots here in a childhood spent watching what closeness did to the strongest person she knew. There were brothers, too, in the House of the Full Moon, siblings who would go on to become mighty and terrible figures in their own right, each of them shaped by the same house and the same sorrows, each of them turning out utterly different from the others. Their stories are their own, and this channel will give some of them their own nights in time. So tonight, we will only note that Ranni did not grow up alone, and that the Carrion children scattered across this world's history in strange and separate directions, one toward war, one toward blasphemy, and one, Ranni, toward the stars. What they shared was the house, and the grief in it, and the cold upward gaze it taught them all. What they did with that inheritance is what separates them. Rest now. When we return, we will look closely at the specific shape of Ranni's fate as an Empyrean, the guardians assigned to her, the beast sworn to her, and the particular gilded trap that made her decide, at last, that she would rather do something terrible than live one more day as the thing she was made to be. Chapter 4: The Guardians and the Leash. Welcome back. Settle in, and let the quiet settle with you. We have met the world Ranni was born into and the house that raised her. Tonight we look at the specific fate that was fastened to her as an Empyrean, because it is in the details of that fate that her decision starts to make a terrible kind of sense. The cage was not cruel, exactly. That is what made it so hard to escape. It was made of care. As an Empyrean, Ranni was given a 2 fingers of her own, one of the trembling messenger hands of the greater will, to guide her toward her destiny, and she was given a shadow-bound beast, a companion bound to her by fate, sworn to her service, meant to protect her, and, if she ever strayed too far from her assigned path, to become the instrument of her ending. That beast was a half-wolf warrior named Blaidd, and his story is one of the most heartbreaking threads in all of this, and we will give it a whole night's worth of attention before we are done. For now it is enough to understand what he represented in the architecture of Ranni's fate. He was her protector and her leash at once. He loved her, genuinely, with the whole of his fierce and loyal heart, and he was created, at the deepest level of his being, to serve the very design she wanted to escape. Sit with the particular horror of that arrangement, because it is the horror Ranni lived inside every day. The people closest to her, the ones assigned to guide and guard and love her, were also the mechanisms by which the greater will kept its hold on her. Her 2 fingers guided her toward a destiny she did not want. Her shadow-bound beast, who loved her, was fated to kill her if she refused that destiny too openly. There was no one she could simply trust without qualification, because the ones who loved her most were also the ones most deeply woven into the design she meant to betray. To escape the cage, she would have to move around even the people who cared for her, keep her true intentions hidden even from those sworn to her, plan in a solitude so complete that not even love could be allowed all the way in. That is a desperately lonely way to live. Ranni chose it deliberately because the alternative was to remain, forever, a vessel. What did Ranni actually want underneath all of this? Let us state it as plainly as this telling can. She wanted to be free of the greater will entirely, not to defeat it, not to replace it, not to seize its throne and rule in its place, to be rid of it, and of all the outer gods like it, and of the whole arrangement by which distant powers reach down into the world and shape its people into vessels for their designs. She looked at the fate assigned to her, and she looked further, at the entire structure of gods reaching down and using the lives of those below them, and she decided that the problem was not any particular cruelty, but the arrangement itself. As long as the gods could reach the world would never be free. So she did not want a better master. She wanted no master at all, for herself, and eventually for everyone. That is a genuinely radical wish. In a world built entirely on divine control, it is closer to a revolution than a rebellion. What did wanting that cost her? Nearly everything, and this is where her story turns from tragedy towards something harder to name. To sever herself from the greater will, to escape a fate woven into her very flesh, Ranni would have to do something monstrous. She would have to kill, not an enemy in battle, but something far more intimate and terrible. She would have to destroy her own body, the Empyrean flesh through which the greater will held her, and to do that she would need a weapon capable of killing what was never meant to die. And obtaining that weapon and using it would require a conspiracy. And that conspiracy would require the death of someone else entirely, an innocent, a beloved figure of the Golden Order who had done nothing to deserve what was coming. Ranni's freedom had a price, and the price was paid in the lives of others, and she knew it going in. This is what makes her neither a hero nor a villain, but something more difficult. She was right about the cage, and she did a terrible thing to escape it. Both of those are true, and the story never lets you forget either one. What does that reveal about the world she lived in? It reveals the cruelest bind this world places on the ones who would be free. In a world built on divine control, there is no clean way out. The Order does not offer an exit. It does not have a door marked freedom that you can simply walk through if you decide the honor is not for you. The only way out is through something unforgivable, because the Order has arranged things so that refusing your fate requires an atrocity, so that anyone who wants to escape must first become guilty. Ranni wanted only to be free. The world made sure that wanting freedom and acting on it would stain her forever. That is not an accident of her character. It is the design of the cage. It does not merely hold you. It ensures that the act of escaping it makes you into someone who can never quite be innocent again. Sleep well. When we return, we will look at the weapon Ranni needed, the one thing in all this world capable of killing what was never meant to die, and at how it was stolen from the one who was sworn to guard it forever. Chapter 5. The Death That Was Locked Away. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow, and let everything soften around you, because tonight we come to the strange and terrible thing at the center of Ranni's whole plan, the one power in all this world that could give her what she wanted, and the reason it was so nearly impossible to obtain. To understand the Night of the Black Knives, you first have to understand that death itself, in this world, is not a simple or a natural thing anymore. It was taken away long ago and locked up, and what Ranni needed was a stolen piece of it. At the founding of the Golden Order, when the queen who rules this world first established her reign, she did something that would shape everything that came after, and that would eventually make Ranni's crime possible. She removed death from the natural order, not death in every sense, but the true and final death, the kind that ends a soul completely and forever. This power was contained in a portion of the great ring that binds the world, a rune, the Rune of Death, and the queen tore it out of the ring and sealed it away, so that death could no longer operate freely in the world. This is why so many of the beings in this world cannot truly die, why the great and the divine linger on past any natural end, why death itself feels broken and withheld across the whole of the setting. It was deliberately removed at the very beginning and hidden. Sit with what a strange and consequential act that was. The founder of the Golden Order looked at death, the one thing every living thing must eventually face, and decided to take it out of the world, to lock it away where it could not touch the ones she meant to protect. On its surface, it sounds almost like mercy, a gift, the ending of endings. In practice, it was a wound. A world with death withheld is a world where nothing can truly conclude, where the dead do not rest and the dying do not finish, and the whole natural rhythm of ending and renewal is jammed. But for our purposes tonight, the important thing is simpler. Death was made into an object, a sealed rune, a locked away power, rather than a natural process. And an object that has been locked away is an object that can, in principle, be stolen. The sealed Rune of Death was not left unguarded. It was entrusted to a keeper, a fearsome guardian bound to the queen herself, a shadow-bound beast of her own, who took the rune into his care and guarded it with a ferocity beyond almost anything else in this world. He is a figure this channel will give a full night to another time, so tonight we will only note his role. He carried the sealed death, and he guarded it, and for a very long age no one could reach it, because reaching it meant getting past him, and getting past him was thought to be impossible. The queen had removed death from the world and placed it behind the strongest lock she had. As far as the Golden Order was concerned, the matter was settled. Death was gone, safely, forever. But it was not quite forever, and it was not quite safe, and this is the crack that Ranni's whole plan slipped through. Somehow, a fragment of that sealed death was stolen. A shard of the Rune of Death, a splinter of the one power capable of ending what was never meant to end, was taken from the guardian who kept it, and passed into the hands of those who meant to use it. The lore does not lay out every step of how this theft was accomplished, and there is genuine uncertainty about the exact mechanics of it. What survives clearly is the result. A piece of true death, the Golden Order's most carefully hidden secret, was loose in the world in the hands of a conspiracy, and it could be used to kill the unkillable. That fragment is the key to everything that follows. Without it, Ranni's escape was impossible. With it, the impossible became a matter of planning and patience and the willingness to do something terrible with it. Consider what it meant that this power existed at all in the hands of anyone. The Golden Order had built its entire sense of security on the idea that its great figures could not truly die, that the demigods and the divine were beyond death's reach. A stolen shard of the Rune of Death made a lie of all of that in a single stroke. Suddenly the unkillable could be killed. Suddenly the security the Golden Order rested on was an illusion, waiting only for someone with the fragment and the will to shatter it. Ranni had both, and she was not the only one who wanted the Golden Order's certainties broken, which is why the conspiracy that carried out the night was larger and stranger than one witch acting alone. But the fragment of death was the heart of it. Everything else was just the hands that would wield it. Rest now. When we return, we will meet those hands, the assassins who carried the stolen death in the dark, women from an old and sorrowful people whose blades were made to kill the things that were never supposed to be able to die. Chapter 6: The Assassins in the Dark. Welcome back. Get comfortable and let everything slow down around you. Tonight, we meet the ones who actually carried the stolen death through the dark and put it to use. And they are not the cold schemers you might expect. They are something sadder and stranger, and their story is bound up with the deepest and most hidden history of this world's ruling family. Let us meet the Black Knife Assassins. The assassins who carried out the Night of the Black Knives were women, and they came from a particular people, an old and largely vanished folk who trace back to the very origins of the Queen who founded the Golden Order. They were of the same ancient stock as the Queen herself, a people who came to this world from somewhere else, who carried strange gifts and stranger sorrows, and who were, for the most part, pushed to the margins and forgotten once the Golden Order was secure. This detail matters more than it first appears. The assassins were not outsiders striking at a world they hated. They were kin, in a sense, to the very order they struck against, members of the same ancient people as the Queen at its center. Drawn from the ranks of those the Golden Age had used and then set aside. Their weapons were the thing that made them terrible. Each assassin carried a blade, and into those blades had been worked the stolen fragment of true death, so that the knives could do what no ordinary weapon could, cut a soul rather than merely a body, end the unendable. Kill the beings the Golden Order believed were beyond killing. The blades wreathed themselves in a strange dark flame when the power was called upon, a black fire that was death itself made manifest, and a wound from such a blade did not merely injure. It killed in the deepest and most permanent way this world allows, the way the Golden Order had spent an age making sure nothing could be killed. The assassins moved in the dark, swift and silent, and where their black knives found their mark, even a god could die. What did these women want? This is where their story turns from a tale of villainy towards something closer to tragedy, and the lore leaves much of it in shadow, so we must hold our reading gently. They were, by most accounts, instruments more than authors, carrying out a plan conceived by others, lending their skill and their terrible blades to a conspiracy whose deepest purposes may not have been fully their own. But they were not mindless. They had their own history with the Golden Order, their own reasons for grievance, their own place among the used and discarded that this world produces so reliably. It is not hard to imagine that women drawn from a people pushed to the margins might feel little loyalty to the Golden Order that marginalized them, might be willing, even glad, to drive a knife into the heart of its certainties. Whether they acted from conviction, or coin, or a loyalty to the schemers who directed them, the story does not fully say. What it says is that they were there, in the dark, with death in their hands. There is a particular sorrow in the fact that the Golden Order's own hidden history is what killed it, and the assassins embody that sorrow completely. They were of the Queen's own ancient people. Their blades carried the Queen's own sealed death. The instrument of the Golden Order's first great wound was assembled entirely out of things the Golden Order itself had created and then hidden away. Its own kin, its own removed death, its own discarded margins, all of it turned back against the center that had produced it. This is a pattern this world repeats endlessly, and here is one of its sharpest instances. The Golden Order was not brought down by an outside enemy. It was brought down by its own buried past, by the people and the powers it had set aside, gathered up by someone patient enough to see how they could be used. Ranni saw it. She understood that the Order's own hidden history was a weapon if you knew where to reach. Consider, as we sit here in the quiet, how much of this world's tragedy comes from things that were hidden rather than faced. The death that was locked away instead of accepted. The people who were pushed to the margins instead of honored. The secrets buried beneath the golden story instead of told. Each of those hidden things became, in time, a vulnerability, a place where the order could be struck. The Black Knife Assassins are what happens when all of those hidden things come together at once, in the dark, with a purpose. They are the Golden Order's own buried past, given blades made of the Golden Order's own buried death, pointed at the Golden Order's own beloved heart. There is a terrible symmetry to it, and Ranni, cold and clear-eyed, was the one who arranged the pieces into that shape. Sleep well. When we return, we will come at last to the night itself, the night of the Black Knives, and to the beloved Golden Prince, who was its first and most mourned victim, and to the wound that his death opened in the whole of the world. Chapter 7. The Night Itself. Welcome back, settle in, and let the room grow soft and dark around you, because tonight we come to the event that gives this whole story its name, the single night on which the assassins moved and the stolen death was used, and the Golden Order received a wound it would never recover from. It is a quiet horror, this night, carried out in darkness and silence, and its consequences are still unfolding across the whole of the world you can walk through today. On a certain night, in the age before the Great Shattering, the Black Knife Assassins moved against the demigods of the Golden Order, the children of the Queen, the great and blessed figures the whole world believed were beyond death's reach. Their chief target, the one whose death mattered most and hurt most, was the Queen's own firstborn, a golden prince beloved across the entire order, radiant and gentle and universally mourned. His name was Godwyn, called Godwyn the Golden, and he was, by every account this world preserves, the sort of person a whole kingdom loves without needing to be told to. And on the night of the Black Knives, he was killed. But he was not killed the way anyone in this world could ordinarily be killed, and this is the detail that makes the night so much more than a simple assassination. The Black Knives, carrying their fragment of true death, did not merely end Godwyn's body. They killed his soul while leaving his body behind. Because death had been sealed away, because the natural order of ending had been broken by the Queen at the founding, Godwyn's death came out wrong, incomplete, monstrous. His soul died. His body did not. He became the first of a terrible new category of being, dead in the deepest sense, and yet still, somehow, going on, a wound in the very idea of death. The first victim of a world where death had been withheld and then let back in through a stolen shard. His full story, what became of him and of the things that spread from his death, belongs to its own night, and this channel will give it that night in time. Tonight we hold only the fact of it. The Golden Prince was killed in a way that was never supposed to be possible, and his death did not let him rest. Sit with what that death meant for the Golden Order, because it was far larger than the loss of one prince, beloved as he was. Godwyn was the first of the demigods to die. The first. In an order built on the belief that its great figures were beyond death, the death of the firstborn was not just a grief, but a revelation, a tearing of the veil. It proved that the unkillable could be killed. It proved that the Golden Order's deepest certainty was a lie. And it did something worse still, because the manner of his death, soul killed but body living, meant that the wound it opened could not simply be mourned and moved past. It festered. It spread. The stolen death, once used, did not stay contained in a single night. It became a rot in the foundations of the whole order, a proof of mortality that could not be unproven, a crack that would widen, in time, into the collapse of everything. The night of the Black Knives is where the Golden Order received its death wound, even though it would take a long while yet to fall. And here is the reveal at the heart of tonight's story, the thing the histories of the Golden Order work hardest to obscure. This was not random. It was not a tragedy that simply befell the Golden Order out of the dark. It was arranged. It was planned carefully by conspirators with their own purposes, and one of those conspirators, perhaps the one with the clearest and coldest purpose of all, was Ranni. The beloved prince's death was not an accident of fate. It was a move in a plan, a necessary step toward a goal that had nothing to do with Godwyn himself. He was, in the coldest possible sense, collateral, someone the plan required to die so that the plan could proceed. Ranni did not hate Godwin. There is no sign she bore him any grudge at all. He simply had to die for her escape to work, and so she let it happen, or helped it happen, and carried that with her ever after. What does it reveal? That the Golden Order's first great wound was self-inflicted, arranged from within by one of the Queen's own descendants. It reveals the thing this world keeps insisting on, that the deepest damage a system suffers usually comes from inside it, from the very people it made and shaped and failed. Ranni was a product of the Golden Order, an Empyrean raised in its highest honor, and she used everything the Order had given her, its hidden death, its marginalized kin, its beloved prince, to strike at the Order from within in service of her own escape. The Night of the Black Knives is the Golden Order being wounded by its own child, with its own weapons, for reasons the Order itself had created, by building a cage no one could leave except through an atrocity. Sit with that. The betrayal that broke the Golden Order was not an attack from outside. It was an escape attempt from inside, and the price of the escape was a beloved life, and the one who paid that price with someone else's blood knew exactly what she was doing. Rest now. When we return, we will see the second death of that same night, the one Ranni inflicted not on another, but on herself, when she turned the stolen death against her own body to cut the leash the greater will had fastened to her soul. Chapter 8. The Death She Gave Herself. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow all the way down, and let everything grow still. Because tonight we come to the strangest and most revealing act in Ranni's whole story, the one that shows you exactly how far she was willing to go to be free. The Night of the Black Knives killed a beloved prince. It also, in the same dark hours, killed Ranni. And Ranni was the one who arranged her own death, deliberately, as the whole point of the exercise. Remember what held Ranni in her fate. Her Empyrean flesh, the body she was born in, was the thing through which the greater will and its two fingers maintained their grip on her. As long as she wore that body, she was a vessel, tethered to the design, watched by her fingers, bound to a destiny she never chose. To be free, she did not merely need to run away, because there is no running from a leash fastened to your own flesh. She needed to sever the flesh itself, to kill the body through which she was held, so that her soul could slip free of the grip that had held it since birth. And to kill an Empyrean's body, which was never meant to truly die, she needed exactly what the Black Knives carried: the stolen fragment of true death. So on the night of the Black Knives, Ranni turned that death against herself. She used the stolen power of the Rune of Death to slay her own Empyrean flesh, to end the body she was born in, deliberately by her own will. This is confirmed plainly in the fragments she leaves behind, spoken almost as a confession. She used the Rune of Death to kill her own flesh. And in doing so, she cut herself loose from the two fingers, from the greater will, from the entire design that had claimed her. Her body died that night alongside the prince. But Ranni did not end. Her soul survived the death of her flesh, freed at last from the tether, and passed into a new vessel, a great doll, a crafted body of wood and enchantment, through which she would go on existing. No longer as the greater will's Empyrean, but as something new, something the design had no hold on anymore. It is worth understanding, too, that the vessel Ranni escaped into was not a random object, but something deeply tied to her own inheritance. The Carrion house and the sorcerers gathered around it had long practiced the strange and delicate art of crafting dolls, puppets shaped in the likeness of the living, vessels made with care and skill to hold more than mere stuffing. Ranni's new body was such a doll, a crafted thing of her own people's tradition, made to receive a soul that no longer had a living body to call home. There is something fitting in that, and something deeply sad. The woman who refused to be a vessel for the greater will chose instead to become a soul housed in a doll of her own house's making. She did not escape being a vessel altogether. She escaped being the greater will's vessel, and became, instead, her own, housed in a body she or her people had shaped rather than one a distant god had assigned to her. That is a real and meaningful difference. The difference between a container that someone else fills with their design and a container you climb into by your own free choice. But it is not the same as being free of vessels entirely. Even in her hard won freedom, Ranni lives inside a made thing, a puppet, a crafted and painted form, and she will go on living inside it for the whole of her long and distant existence. Freedom, for Ranni, did not mean having no vessel. It meant, at last, choosing her own. Sit with the strangeness and the courage and the horror of that act all at once, because it is all three. Ranni wanted freedom so badly that she killed herself to get it, and survived, and went on in a doll's body. A soul without the flesh that had bound it. Think of what it takes to do that. To look at your own body, the vessel of your assigned fate, and decide to destroy it, knowing you will lose the warmth of flesh, the ordinary feeling of being alive, everything a body gives you, in exchange for a freedom you cannot even be certain will work. Ranni did not flinch from it. She traded her living body for a puppet's and called it liberation, because to her the living body was a cage and the puppet was free, and she would rather be a free soul in a doll than a living god on a leash. That is a genuinely radical valuation of freedom over comfort, over life itself, as most beings understand it, and it tells you everything about how completely she meant to escape. There is a loneliness in what she became that the story never lets you forget. Ranni, after the night, is a soul in a doll, and even those who meet her feel the strangeness of it, the cold of it, the distance. She gave up warmth to be free, and the giving up was not painless, and it was not without cost, and she carries the cost in her very form ever after. When travelers meet her, centuries later, she is often a giant doll, still and pale, or a soul flickering behind a puppet's painted eyes, or a cold small figure met by moonlight who calls herself by another name. She is free in the way she wanted. She is also visibly no longer fully alive, no longer warm, no longer held by the ordinary comforts of a body and a place and a people. She chose that. She chose the cold of freedom over the warmth of the cage with full knowledge of the trade, and she has been living inside that trade ever since. What does Ranni's self-inflicted death finally reveal about her and about the price of the thing she wanted? It reveals that freedom in this world is not taken from the world so much as carved out of yourself. Ranni did not defeat the greater will in battle. She could not. No one can. What she could do was make herself unusable to it by destroying the very thing it held her by, even though that thing was her own body, her own life as she had known it. Her freedom cost a prince his soul, and it cost Ranni her flesh, and it cost her, permanently, the warmth and the closeness and the ordinary belonging that she had watched destroy her mother and had decided she wanted no part of anyway. She got exactly what she wanted. The story makes you sit with the fact that getting exactly what you want can look, from the outside, almost indistinguishable from loss. Both things are true simultaneously. Ranni won her freedom, and Ranni is a cold soul in a doll, alone in the dark, having spent a prince and her own body to get there. The story will not tell you whether it was worth it. It only shows you the price in full and lets you weigh it yourself. Sleep well. When we return, we will meet the ones who loved Ranni and served her through all of this, the wolf sworn to her by fate, and the giant who guarded her by choice, and we will see what her long, cold escape cost the ones who gave her their loyalty. Chapter 9. The Wolf Who Howled at the Moon. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow, and let everything grow gentle around you, because tonight we meet the one who loved Ranni most completely, and whose love was doomed from the very start by the same design she spent her life escaping. His name is Blaidd, and he is a half-wolf warrior, and his story is one of the most quietly heartbreaking things in all of this world. Let us meet him slowly and grieve for him properly, because almost no one else in his story ever gets the chance to. Blaidd was Ranni's shadow-bound beast. Remember what that means from earlier tonight. Every Empyrean is given such a companion, a being bound to them by fate, sworn to protect them, and secretly fated to become their executioner should they ever stray too far from the path the greater will laid out. Blaidd was made for Ranni in exactly this way. He was bound to her at the deepest level of his being, sworn to her service, devoted to her with the whole fierce loyalty of his nature. And he was also woven into that same nature, the Leash. He was the thing that was supposed to end her if she rebelled. His love for her and his function as her potential killer were not two separate things. They were the same binding, seen from two sides. What did Blaidd want? This is where his story breaks your heart, because what Blaidd wanted was the simplest and most loyal thing imaginable. He wanted to serve Ranni. He wanted to protect her, to be useful to her, to be the loyal wolf at her side through whatever came. He loved her without reservation and without calculation, the way the truest of companions love, asking nothing back except the chance to keep serving. And he did serve her faithfully through her long, strange plan, aiding her, aiding those she sent to help her, standing as her sworn wolf across the whole of her cold and lonely campaign for freedom. There was no false note in his devotion. Of everyone in Ranni's orbit, Blaidd was the one whose loyalty was purest and least self-interested. He simply loved her and served her and asked for nothing. What did that devotion cost him? Everything, and in the cruelest possible way, because the very design that bound him to Ranni also doomed him. A shadow-bound beast is fated, eventually, to turn, to succumb to the wildness and the madness woven into what it is, to become a danger to the very one it was sworn to protect. This was always going to happen to Blaidd. It was written into him from the beginning, part of the same fate that made him Ranni's companion, and it did happen. In time, the madness rose in him, the feral doom of his nature surfacing at last, and the loyal wolf who wanted only to serve became a raging thing, a threat, no longer able to be what he had always wanted to be. He did not choose this. He fought it, as long as he could. But it was in him from the start, placed there by the same greater will whose design Ranni spent her life escaping, and in the end, it took him. Sit with the particular horror of Blaidd's fate, because it is a fate no one deserves less. He loved Ranni completely, served her faithfully, wanted nothing but to be her loyal wolf. And he was doomed from birth to lose his mind and become a danger to her, through no fault of his own, by a design he never agreed to and could not escape. And Ranni, who was busy escaping her own version of that same design, could not save him from his. The one who loved her most was destroyed by the very thing she was fighting against, and she could not stop it, and in the end the loyal wolf had to be put down, mad and raging, far from the clear-eyed companion he had been. There is a story that survives of Blaidd howling at the moon, calling out to Ranni, to the mistress he loved, even as the doom rose in him. That is the image to hold. A faithful wolf howling at the cold moon of the mistress he adored, as the fate written into his blood slowly took him away from her. It is a story that lives in a few scattered lines, and it is more affecting than the whole plots of most other tales. And here is the part that will not let you look away, the part that implicates Ranni herself. She knew, she understood what Blaidd was and what he was fated to become from the beginning. She accepted his loyal service, knowing that his loyalty was doomed, knowing that the design that made him hers would eventually destroy him. And she let him serve her anyway, because she needed him, and because there was nothing she could do to save him regardless. Was that cruel? Or was it simply the same hard clarity she brought to everything, the willingness to let the ones around her pay the costs of a world neither she nor they had made? The story does not resolve it. Ranni loved Blaidd in her cold way, or at least valued him, and she used him, and she could not save him, and all of those are true at once. The wolf who howled at the moon is one more life spent, however unwillingly, on the altar of Ranni's freedom, and one more reason her escape can never be called clean. Rest now. When we return, we will meet two more of Ranni's servants, one who guarded her out of pure and chosen loyalty, and one who served her while quietly serving only himself, and we will see how differently devotion and self-interest wear the same uniform. Chapter 10. The Loyal Giant and the Smiling Sorcerer. Welcome back. Get comfortable and let the quiet hold you, because tonight we look at two more figures who served Ranni, set side by side because they are opposites, and because seeing them together teaches you something about what loyalty actually is, and how easily its true and false forms can wear the same face. One of them guarded Ranni with his whole honest heart. The other bowed to her while scheming for himself. Let us meet them both. The first is Iji, a great warrior smith, enormous in stature, of a blood that reaches back to the giants of an older age. Iji served Ranni not because fate bound him to her, the way it bound Blaidd, but because he chose to, out of a loyalty freely given and deeply held. He was her counselor and her guardian, watching over her interests, protecting the ones she cared about, offering steady and honest guidance to any traveler who came into her service. There is a plainness to Iji's loyalty that is deeply moving in a story so full of scheming and cold calculation. He is not clever about his devotion. He is not hiding anything behind it. He simply loves and serves the witch he has chosen to serve, and he does it well, and he means it. And he asks for nothing grand in return. In a tale of conspiracies and hidden purposes, Iji is a rare, clear thing, a servant whose service is exactly what it appears to be. And Iji's loyalty costs him, as loyalty tends to in this world. He stands between Ranni and those who would harm her or her plans, and standing in that place is dangerous, and in the end it takes his life. He is struck down, killed by treachery, felled while doing the thing he had always done, guarding the mistress he had chosen. There is a quiet devastation in his end, the more so because he saw it coming and stood his ground anyway. He warns those he trusts, near the end, of the danger around Ranni, of the false servants and the hidden knives, and then he meets his own death, with the same steady honesty he brought to everything. Iji is the loyal one who guarded by choice, and his reward, like the reward of so many loyal ones in this world, is to die at his post, having asked for nothing and received nothing but the chance to serve until the service killed him. The second figure is a very different creature, and his name is Seluvis. He too serves Ranni, or appears to, a sorcerer of polished manners and elaborate courtesy, always bowing, always smooth, always speaking in the honeyed tones of a devoted servant. But Seluvis serves himself. Underneath the courtesy, he is running his own schemes, pursuing his own strange ambitions, treating everyone around him, including Ranni and any traveler foolish enough to trust him, as tools to be used in his private designs. He collects people, in a sense, seeks to turn them into puppets for his own purposes. And his loyalty to Ranni is a costume he wears over an ambition that has room in it for no one but himself. He is not loud about his treachery. That is what makes him dangerous. He wears the exact same uniform of service that Iji wears, bows the same bows, speaks the same words of devotion, and means none of it. Set Iji and Seluvis side by side, and you see something this world wants you to understand about the nature of service. Loyalty and its counterfeit look identical from the outside. Both men serve Ranni. Both call themselves her servants. Both are useful to her plans. And one of them means it with his whole honest heart, and the other means only to use her as he uses everyone, and you cannot tell which is which by the bowing, or the words, or the outward show of devotion. You can only tell by what they do when loyalty costs something. Iji pays the cost, gives his life, guards his post to the end. Seluvis, when the moment comes, is revealed as what he always was, a schemer who served only his own advancement. The uniform is the same. The heart underneath is everything. This world is full of both kinds, and it rarely labels them for you, and learning to tell the true servant from the false one is one of the hardest and most necessary skills anyone in it can learn. What does it say about Ranni that her circle held both the truest loyalty and the falsest at once? It says something about the cost of the solitude she chose. Ranni trusted almost no one, kept her true purposes hidden even from those sworn to her, moved through her own conspiracy in a loneliness so complete that even her most loyal servants did not know the whole of her heart. In a way, she had to. Her plan was too dangerous to share, her enemies too powerful, her margin for betrayal too thin. But the cost of that solitude was that she could never fully distinguish the Igis from the Seluvises in her own service, never fully rest in anyone's loyalty, never simply trust. She was surrounded by servants and profoundly alone among them, guarded by one who loved her and used by one who did not, and unable, in her chosen coldness, to fully lean on either. Freedom bought at the price of trust is a lonely freedom indeed, and Ranni paid that price, along with all the others. Sleep well. When we return, we will look at why Ranni's carefully laid plan stalled for an entire age, held in place by a brother's terrible strength, and at what had to happen before the stars she longed for could finally begin to move. Chapter 11: The Stars That Would Not Move. Welcome back. Settle in and let everything slow down around you, because tonight we come to the strange long pause in the middle of Ranni's story, the age of waiting, when everything she had worked for was ready and yet could not proceed, held frozen by a power she could not overcome and did not wish to destroy herself. To understand it, we have to look up, at the stars, and at the brother who held them still. Ranni's freedom was bound up with the stars. Her whole vision, the future she was reaching toward, was an age ruled not by the Golden Order or the Greater Will, but by the distant cold light of the stars and the moon, the carrion inheritance turned into a destiny for the whole world. And the movement of the stars, in this world, is not merely a matter of astronomy. The stars are tied to fate, to destiny, to the turning of ages, and their movement or their stillness governs whether certain futures can arrive at all. Ranni's Age of the Stars could not begin while the stars themselves were held frozen in the sky. And they were held frozen for a very long age by one of the mightiest figures this world ever produced. That figure was Radon, a great warlord, a general of overwhelming strength, and, by the tangled blood of this world's ruling houses, connected to Ranni's own family. Radon possessed a mastery over the force of gravity itself, a power so great that he could hold back the very stars, keep them fixed in place, prevent their fated movement across the sky. Why he did this reaches into his own long story, which this channel has touched on other nights and will not retell in full here. What matters for Ranni is the effect. As long as Radon held the stars, Ranni's destiny was frozen with them. Her plan, however perfectly laid, however completely she had freed herself from her flesh and her fingers, could not reach its conclusion, because the sky itself was locked, and the age she longed for could not turn while the stars stood still. Sit with what that meant for Ranni and the terrible patience it demanded of her. She had done the hardest things already. She had arranged the death of a prince. She had killed her own body. She had cut herself free of the greater will at a cost almost no one else would ever pay. And then, having done all of it, she had to wait for an age. Frozen in place by a brother's strength, her freedom achieved, but her future unreachable, she could do nothing but persist, in her doll's body, in the cold, biding her time across a span of years that would break most ordinary patience entirely. Ranni's coldness, her distance, her stillness, is not only temperament. It is also the discipline of someone who has learned to wait an unimaginably long time for a sky to move, holding her purpose steady across an age of enforced stillness, never wavering, never giving up, simply enduring until the conditions of her freedom could finally be met. For the stars to move, Radon had to fall. That is the plain and heavy fact at the center of this pause. The one holding the stars had to be brought down, his grip on the sky broken, before the fated movement could resume and Ranni's age could begin. Radon's own long decline and eventual defeat is a story of its own, bound up with a terrible sickness and a great battle and a festival held in his honor, all of which this channel has explored on other nights and will not repeat tonight. What we hold here is only its meaning for Ranni. Somewhere in the turning of all these separate tragedies, the one holding the stars was at last brought down, and the sky came unlocked, and the frozen destiny Ranni had been waiting through an age to claim finally became reachable again. Her patience, at last, had somewhere to go. There is something worth noticing in how many separate lives had to bend around Ranni's single frozen plan. A prince had to die for her to be free. A brother had to fall for her stars to move. Servants had to guard her and be spent in the guarding. A wolf had to be doomed by the same design she escaped. Ranni's freedom was not a private act, contained within herself. It rippled outward across the whole of this world's history, bending other lives around it, requiring other deaths, waiting on other tragedies, until the moment finally came when everything aligned and the cold age she had planned for could begin. This is what it costs in a world like this one to change your own fate. You do not change it alone. The whole world has to move, and people die in the moving, and the one who wanted only to be free finds that her freedom has a weight measured in everyone else it touched. Rest now. When we return, we will finally walk beside the one Ranni chose to carry out the last of her plan, the tarnish she summoned out of all the wanderers of this world to help her reach, at last, the freedom she had waited an age for. Chapter 12. The Stranger She Chose. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow, and let everything grow soft and unhurried, because tonight we come to the part of the story where Ranni finally reaches out, across all her solitude and all her caution, and chooses a single stranger to help her finish what she began. That stranger is the Tarnished, the wanderer whose journey the whole of this world is built around, and the way Ranni draws them into her plan tells you a great deal about who she is when she finally decides to trust. She does not announce herself. That would not be her way. When a traveler first crosses her path, early in their journey, she appears not as Ranni the witch, not as the doll, not as the conspirator who broke the Golden Order, but as a small figure met by moonlight at a lonely waystone, calling herself by another name, a snow witch, resting in the dark. She offers the traveler a gift, a small kindness, a bell that lets them call spirits to their side, and then she is gone, having revealed almost nothing, having tested the waters of trust in the most careful and deniable way possible. This is Ranni's whole method in miniature. She reaches out obliquely under a false name, offering something useful, watching to see what the stranger does with it, giving away nothing of her true self until she has decided the stranger is worth the risk. When she finally does reveal herself more fully, it is in her doll's body, seated high in a lonely tower, still and pale and cold, and the traveler who climbs to meet her finds not a warm mistress welcoming a new servant, but a strange and distant figure, who speaks in old and formal words, and asks for service on terms that are never fully explained. Ranni does not flatter. She does not warm to the traveler, or promise them reward, or pretend to a closeness she does not feel. She offers instead a kind of cold honesty, a plain invitation to serve a purpose she will not entirely disclose, in the pursuit of an end she describes only in fragments. And there is something oddly compelling in that coldness, after a whole world of figures who lie and flatter and manipulate. Ranni does not pretend to love the traveler. She simply asks for their help and trusts them in her guarded way with a piece of the most dangerous secret in the world. The tasks she sets lead the traveler down, beneath the world, into the buried and forgotten places where the last pieces of her plan are hidden. She sends them searching for a treasure concealed in an eternal city fallen deep below the surface of the earth, a weapon she needs for the final act of her escape. And as the traveler carries out her cold instructions, descending through the ruins of ages, gathering the pieces she requires, a strange relationship forms between them. Unlike almost any other in this world, it is not warm. It is not romantic in any ordinary sense, not at first. It is something cooler and stranger, a partnership between a cold witch and a silent wanderer, built not on affection, but on a shared purpose and a slowly growing, guarded trust. Ranni has spent her whole life unable to fully rely on anyone. In the Tarnished, at last, she finds someone she can point at a task and trust to complete it. Someone outside the whole web of fate and family and betrayal that has bound everyone else around her. Consider what it means that Ranni, of all the figures in this world, is the one who reaches out to the player and asks for help. She is the coldest, the most guarded, the most self-sufficient of them all, the one who trusted no one and planned in total solitude and killed her own body rather than depend on anyone else to free her. And yet, in the end, even Ranni cannot finish alone. She needs a stranger. She needs someone from outside her frozen world to carry out the last steps of her escape, to go where she cannot go, to retrieve what she cannot retrieve, to be at the final moment the hands she no longer has in the ordinary sense. There is something quietly moving in that, underneath all her coldness. The one who wanted freedom from all attachment finds that even her freedom requires, at the last, a single act of trust in another person. She cannot escape entirely alone. No one can, not even Ranni. What does the traveler want in serving her? The story leaves this open, and rightly, because it is the traveler's choice and yours. Perhaps they serve her out of curiosity, drawn by the mystery of the cold witch and her hidden purpose. Perhaps they come to believe in her vision and the idea of a world freed from the meddling of the gods. Perhaps they simply follow the path laid in front of them, as travelers in this world so often do, without fully understanding where it leads. Ranni does not require the traveler to believe in her cause. She only requires them to help. And in that gap, between the help given and the belief withheld, the story leaves room for you to decide what you are actually doing when you serve the witch who broke the Golden Order, and whether her cold dream is one you would choose to make real. Sleep well. When we return, we will follow the traveler down into the fallen city itself, and to the Blaidd hidden there. And we will watch Ranni take the final step of her long escape, and slay the last thing that bound her to the world she wished to leave behind. Chapter 13. The Fallen City and the Fingerslayer. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow, and let everything grow dim and quiet around you, because tonight we descend down beneath the surface of the world, into a fallen city where the last piece of Ranni's plan lay hidden, waiting through the long age for the moment the stars would move and someone could finally come to claim it. Let us go down slowly. The deep places of this world are not to be hurried through. When the stars came unlocked at last, a great star fell, and where it fell it opened a way down, into the earth, into one of the eternal cities of the deep that had lain beyond reach for the whole of the frozen age. This was Nokron, a city of the night, built by an old people who worshipped the stars in the dark, cast down beneath the world long ago and forgotten by the Golden Order above. It is a place of strange and mournful beauty, silver and shadowed. Its silent streets and ghostly buildings, hanging in the dark, like a memory of a civilization that the surface world would rather not remember. The traveler goes down into it, at Ranni's bidding, into the hushed and haunted deep, searching for the one thing she needs to finish her escape. Let me pause here for a breath, quietly, the way you might stop partway down a long dark stair to let your eyes adjust. If you are still with me, awake, or already halfway into sleep, thank you for keeping me company through all of this. These are long nights to make and long nights to sit inside, and if this slow kind of telling means something to you, then following along here on the Lore Den, a like, a quiet subscribe, genuinely helps and lets me go on making these for whoever needs one in the dark. That is all of it. No urgency at all. Now let us keep going down into the Silver City and find the blade that waits there. What the traveler is searching for is a weapon of a very particular kind, and its name tells you exactly what it is for. The Fingerslayer blade. It is a weapon made to kill a two fingers, one of those trembling messenger hands of the greater will, the very things that guide and bind the chosen Empyreans to their fate. Such a weapon is almost beyond price and almost beyond finding, because the two fingers are meant to be untouchable, the sacred intermediaries of a god, not the sort of thing anyone is supposed to be able to kill. But the old people of the deep, in their long exile from the Golden Order, had made such a blade, or kept it, and hidden it in their fallen city, and there it waited through the ages for someone with a reason to use it. Ranni had the reason. She needed her own two fingers dead, the last tether between her and the greater will severed completely. And the Fingerslayer blade was the instrument that could do it. Consider the shape of what Ranni is doing, gathered up in this single object. She has already killed her own body to escape the greater will's grip. Now she reaches for a blade made to kill the greater will's own messenger, the sacred hand that was assigned to guide her. She is not merely slipping free of the design, she is turning and striking at the very instrument of that design, killing the finger that pointed her toward her fate. There is a completeness to her rebellion that is genuinely staggering when you lay it all out. Most who chafe against their fate settle for disobedience, for slipping the leash. Ranni means to sever it at every point, to kill her flesh, to kill her finger, to leave nothing of the greater will's grip on her intact anywhere. She does not want to escape her keepers. She wants there to be no keeper left that could ever reach her again. And so, with the Fingerslayer blade brought up out of the deep, the last severance is made. Ranni's own two fingers is slain, the trembling hand that had guided her since birth, put to death by a blade made for exactly that purpose. The tether is cut. The greater will, for the first time, has no hold on her at all, not through her flesh, which she destroyed, and not through her finger, which is now dead. She is free, truly, completely free, in a way almost no one in the whole history of this world has ever been free, standing outside the reach of the god that made her, a soul in a doll, with no leash left anywhere upon it. It has cost a prince, and her own body, and a wolf, and a giant, and an age of waiting, and now the death of a sacred messenger. But it is done. The cage is open. Ranni has walked out of it at last. There is one more thing the traveler finds in the deep places tied to all of this, and it is worth naming for the quiet devastation folded into it. Ranni's original body, the Empyrean flesh she slew on the night of the Black Knives, still exists somewhere in this world, a great cold corpse, and upon it is the mark that confirms the whole terrible truth of what she did, the sign that she used the stolen death to slay her own flesh with her own will. To come upon that body is to come upon the physical proof of Ranni's sacrifice, the discarded flesh of the woman who would rather be a soul in a doll than a god on a leash, lying cold in the dark, marked forever with the death she chose to give herself. It is a story that lives in an item, in a corpse, and a few quiet lines, and it is more affecting, told plainly, than the whole loud tragedies of 100 lesser tales. Rest now. When we return, we will see the world Ranni chose to make, the cold and distant age of the stars, and we will ask what it truly means to free a world from its gods, and whether the freedom is worth the cold that comes with it. Chapter 14. The Age of the Stars. welcome back. Get comfortable and let everything slow all the way down. Because tonight, we come to the end Ranni was reaching for all along, the world she meant to make once she was finally free. And it is a strange and cold and beautiful thing, and the story asks you to feel both its liberation and its loneliness at once. Let us look at the Age of the Stars. If the traveler follows Ranni's path to its end and stands with her at the final threshold, and chooses her cause over all the others this world offers, then Ranni becomes something she was never meant to be, not the greater will's vessel, but a new kind of ruler, and she does with her rule the thing she dreamed of through her whole long escape. She takes the great ring that binds the world, the source of the Golden Order's power and the greater will's grip, and she carries it away, away from the warm golden center, away from the tree, away from the close and meddling embrace of the gods. She takes it out into the cold distant dark, into the realm of the stars and the moon, and she rules from there, from far away, from a distance so great that the gods can no longer reach down into the daily life of the world the way they always have. This is the Age of the Stars, and its nature is written in that single act of taking the ring away. It is an age of distance, where the Golden Order ruled through closeness, through the warm, pervasive presence of the tree and the light and the fingers and the constant nearness of divine authority. Ranni's age rules through remoteness, through a cold, clear light shining from very far off, through a deliberate withdrawal of the gods from the intimate business of the world. She does not free the world by destroying its order the way the flame would. She frees it by removing the order to a distance, by taking the divine hand off the world's shoulder and moving it so far away that it can no longer press down. The world is not ended. It is not even exactly changed in its substance. It is simply set loose, released from the close grip of the gods into a cold and lonely independence beneath distant stars. Sit with what Ranni offers and what she takes away, because it is all one gesture and it cuts both ways. She offers freedom, real freedom, of a kind this world has never known, a world where the gods no longer reach down to shape and use and bind the lives of those below them, where fate is loosened, where the greater will's design no longer presses on every chosen life. That is a genuine gift, and for someone like Ranni, who spent her whole existence crushed under the weight of a fate she never chose, it is the only gift that ever mattered. But she takes away warmth. The same withdrawal that frees the world also cools it. A world where the gods are held at a great distance is a world with less of the close golden comfort the order provided, more alone under a colder sky, freer and lonelier at once. There is a particular quality to the age Ranni envisions that is worth naming, because it is easy to miss underneath the imagery of moons and distant stars. It is an age of reason, of cold clarity, of a certain calculating distance from the warm and irrational forces that had always governed this world, where the Golden Order ruled through faith, through fervent devotion, through the warm binding pull of belief and belonging. Ranni's age would rule through something cooler and more deliberate, a clear-eyed governance from afar, unclouded by the closeness and the zealotry and the constant manipulations that the warm gods had always traded in. There is a genuine appeal in that, especially for anyone who has watched how much cruelty this world's warm faiths produced, how much suffering was done in the name of devotion and belonging. A colder, clearer, more distant order might well be a gentler one, precisely because it does not press so close, does not demand so much of anyone, does not reach its fingers into every single life the way the Golden Order did. But coldness carries its own costs, and the story does not hide them from you. A world governed from a great cold distance is freer, yes, but it is also a world where no one is watching over you closely anymore, for good or for ill. A world where you are left more completely to yourself than this world has ever left anyone before. Ranni offers exactly that. Whether it is a liberation or an abandonment depends, once again, entirely on how much you value being finally, completely left alone. Ranni does not pretend otherwise. Her age is explicitly one of cold, of distance, of a clarity that comes at the price of warmth. She offers the world exactly what she chose for herself, freedom bought with coldness, and she does not lie about the price. There is one warmth Ranni does allow herself at the very end, and it is worth pausing on because it is so unexpected in someone so cold. She takes the traveler, the stranger she chose, as her consort, her companion in the new age, the one who will accompany her into the cold distance she has made. It is not warmth in any ordinary sense. It is a cool and formal union, a betrothal of moon and shadow rather than a romance of the golden kind. But it is something. After a whole life of trusting no one, of planning in total solitude, of killing her own body rather than depend on anyone, Ranni ends by choosing a companion, by allowing one other person to come with her into the freedom she made. Even Ranni, it turns out, does not want to be entirely alone in her cold new world. She wanted freedom from the gods, from fate, from the cage. She did not, in the end, want freedom from all company. The one who trusted no one chose, at the last, to trust one. Does the story tell you whether the Age of the Stars is good? It does not, and it must not, and this is the honest heart of it. When the traveler chooses Ranni's ending, they are saying something specific about what they believe a world should be. They are saying that the meddling of the gods is the deepest problem, deeper than any particular cruelty, and that the world would be better set free and cold than held and warm. They are choosing distance over closeness, clarity over comfort, freedom over belonging. Whether that is wisdom or a terrible mistake depends entirely on what you believe a world is for, and the story refuses to decide it for you. It gives you a cold, free age beneath distant stars, and a warm, bound age beneath a golden tree, and it makes you feel the pull of both, and it leaves the choosing, as it always does, to you. Sleep well. When we return, we will step back from Ranni's cold new world and ask what her whole story argues about fate and freedom and the terrible price of refusing the life you were given. Chapter 15: The Price of Being Free. Welcome back. Settle in and let the quiet hold you, because tonight, before we bring the long story to its close, we ask what all of it was for and what it means, and whether Ranni was right. She is one of the hardest figures in this whole world to judge, and the story wants her that way, and understanding why is understanding something true about freedom itself. Here is the case for Ranni, and it is stronger than you might want it to be. She was born into a cage, a real one, however gilded, a fate assigned before she drew her first breath, a life that was never going to be her own, a destiny to become a vessel for a distant god's design. She did not ask for any of it. She was chosen, and being chosen meant being owned. And she looked at that ownership clearly, more clearly than almost anyone else in her position ever managed, and she refused it. She refused to be used. She refused to become a god shaped to another god's specifications. She wanted to be free and to make the world free, and there is something genuinely magnificent in the completeness of her refusal, and a will strong enough and cold enough to slip a grip that has held nearly everyone else this world ever chose. Ranni is, among other things, the story of someone who would not be owned. And there is a dignity in that which the story fully honors, and here is the case against her, which the story honors just as fully. Her freedom was paid for in other people's lives. A beloved prince was killed, his soul destroyed, his death opening a wound that would spread across the whole world so that Ranni could slip her leash. A loyal wolf was doomed, and a loyal giant was slain in the long working out of her plan. She used the ones who loved her, moved them around like pieces, spent them, however unwillingly, on the altar of her own escape. She did not do these things out of cruelty, but she did them out of a cold willingness to let others pay the cost of what she wanted, and that willingness is not nothing, and the story does not pretend it is. Ranni is also the story of someone who decided her own freedom was worth other people's deaths, and carried that decision out with a steadiness that should trouble you even as you understand it. Both of these are true, and they do not cancel out, and this is the fourth thing this whole night has been arguing. Ambiguity is not a failure of the story. It is the most honest thing the story can offer about a question that genuinely has no clean answer. Was Ranni a hero who freed the world, or a murderer who broke it to escape her own fate? The story refuses to say, because both readings are fully supported, because a person can be right about the cage and wrong in how they broke it, because the same act can be liberation and atrocity at once depending on where you stand and what it cost you. The game does not resolve Ranni, it holds her, cold and complete and unjudged, and it makes you hold her too. And that refusal to simplify her is not the story dodging the question, it is the story respecting how hard the question actually is. There is a deeper thing her story argues too about the nature of freedom in a world like this one, and it is worth naming plainly. Freedom here is never free, and it is never clean, and it is never won alone. Ranni could not simply choose to be free. She had to carve her freedom out of the world, out of other lives, out of her own body, across an age of waiting, at a cost that rippled outward through everyone she touched. This is what the world does to the ones who would be free. It arranges things so that freedom requires an atrocity, so that the only door out of the cage passes through something unforgivable. Ranni is not uniquely cold. She is what the cage produces when someone is strong enough to actually leave it. The horror is not only in what she did, it is in the fact that the world made doing something horrible the price of the one thing she most deserved, which was simply to belong to herself. And through all of it, the gods did not care. The greater will did not descend to reason with Ranni, or to punish her, or even, so far as anyone can tell, to notice her particular rebellion with any personal attention at all. It had chosen her, assigned her a fate, set her keepers upon her, and when she slipped free of all of it, it did not grieve or rage. It simply lost a vessel, one among many, and the great indifferent design went on. This is the coldest truth Ranni's story illuminates, and it is part of why her coldness feels almost like an appropriate response to it. She was never loved by the power that chose her, she was only used, or meant to be. And so she gave that power exactly the same coldness back, refused it, escaped it, and built a world where it could no longer reach anyone, and she did it all without ever once being able to appeal to a god who cared. Because there was no such god, only a will that wanted a vessel and did not care which one. Sleep well. When we return one final time, we will gather all of it together, the night and the knives and the cold long escape, and let it settle into something gentle enough to carry you the rest of the way into sleep. Chapter 16, The Woman Behind the Doll. Welcome back. Let your breathing slow, and let everything grow soft and close around you, because tonight, before the end, we set the conspiracy and the cosmos aside for a while and look simply at Ranni herself, the person underneath the plan, the woman behind the doll. She spent her whole story hidden behind masks and false names and a puppet's painted face, and it is worth spending a little while trying to see the one who is hiding. Think of how many faces Ranni wears across her story. There is the small figure met by moonlight who calls herself a snow witch and gives away almost nothing. There is the great pale doll, seated in a lonely tower, still and cold, speaking in old and formal words. There is the true Ranni, the soul that flickers behind the doll's eyes, glimpsed only rarely and never fully. And underneath all of them there is the girl she once was, the carrion daughter, the child of the House of the Full Moon, before any of the masks were made. Ranni is a woman who has spent so long hiding that the hiding has become part of who she is, layer upon layer of concealment, each one a little further from the warm living girl at the center. To meet her is to meet a series of veils, and to wonder, always, what is truly behind the last of them. She speaks in a particular way, cold and old-fashioned and precise, in the archaic words of an older courtliness, and there is something revealing in that too. It is the speech of someone holding the world at arm's length, formal, careful, never quite warm, never quite close, and yet it is not cruel speech. Listen to Ranni long enough, and you begin to hear, underneath the coldness, a dry and private wit, a strange gentleness in the way she addresses the one she has chosen, a formality that is not so much coldness of heart as coldness of manner, the practiced distance of someone who learned long ago that closeness is dangerous. She is not unfeeling, she is guarded, which is a very different thing, and the guarding is itself a kind of wound. The habit of a person who watched what feeling did to her mother and decided never to be caught by it herself. Consider what it actually costs to exist as Ranni exists after her escape. She is a soul in a doll, she gave up her living flesh, and with it she gave up warmth, touch, the ordinary feeling of being alive in a body. She cannot be held. She cannot feel the sun, or the ache of tiredness, or any of the small warm sensations that make up the texture of a living day. She traded all of that for freedom, and she does not regret the trade, but the story never lets you forget that it was a trade, that something real was given up, that the cold she chose is not only a matter of temperament, but a matter of the very substance of her existence now. Ranni is free, and Ranni is untouchable, in the most literal sense. The two are the same fact seen from two sides. She cannot be gripped by the gods anymore, because she gave up the flesh they could grip, and in giving it up she gave up being gripped by anything at all, including warmth, including comfort, including the simple animal fact of being alive. There is a loneliness at the center of Ranni that all her masks are built around, and it is worth sitting with, because it is the truest thing about her. She pushed everyone to a distance. She had to. Her plan was too dangerous to share, her enemies too powerful, her nature too guarded. But the cost of all that necessary distance is that Ranni is profoundly, structurally alone, surrounded by servants she cannot fully trust, loved by a wolf she could not save, guarded by a giant who died for her, chosen by a stranger she keeps at arm's length, even as she takes them as her consort. She is the loneliest figure in a world full of lonely figures, and her loneliness is not an accident, but a choice, the necessary shape of the freedom she wanted. She wanted to belong to no one. She succeeded, and belonging to no one turns out to be indistinguishable, much of the time, from being utterly alone. And yet, there is that one warmth she allows, at the very end, the stranger she chooses to carry into the cold with her. It is small, and it is cool, and it is nothing like the warm binding love that destroyed her mother. But it is not nothing. After everything, after the flesh she killed and the fingers she slew, and the whole long armored solitude of her escape, Ranni reaches out, once, and asks one other soul to come with her into the free cold dark she made. It is the most human thing she ever does, and it is almost invisible, buried under all her coldness, easy to miss entirely. But it is there. The woman behind the doll, who trusted no one and needed no one, and gave up her own warm body rather than depend on anyone, ends by quietly admitting that she does not want to be entirely alone in her freedom after all. That small admission, in someone so guarded, is worth more than a warmer person's whole heart. It is Ranni letting one crack of light into the cold and choosing not to close it. Rest now. When we return, one last time before the quiet, we will stand back and see the whole shape of what that single cold night set in motion, and how the quiet betrayal of one woman who wanted to be free became the wound at the root of an entire falling world. Chapter 17: What One Night Set in Motion. Welcome back. Settle in and let everything begin to loosen and slow, because we are near the end now, and it is time to stand back and see the whole shape of it, the way you can only see the shape of a thing once you have walked all the way around it. One night, a handful of knives in the dark, and from it, a whole world slowly coming apart across an age, in ways almost no one traced back to their true and quiet source. The Night of the Black Knives is one of those hinges that history turns on without noticing. On its surface, it was a single assassination, a beloved prince killed in the dark. But it was the first demigod death in a world that believed its demigods could not die, and that made it something far larger than a murder. It was a proof. It proved the unkillable could be killed, that the Golden Order's deepest security was a lie, that death, sealed away and hidden, could be stolen and used against the very ones the sealing was meant to protect. And once that was proven, once the first crack appeared, the whole great edifice of the Golden Order began, slowly, to fail. The wound that opened on the Night of the Black Knives never closed. It widened across the age into the vast and terrible unraveling that would eventually tear the whole world apart. Nearly everything that comes after, all the wars and the shattering and the long collapse, traces back, if you follow the threads far enough, to that one quiet night, and to the stolen death that was used in it. And here is the reveal held whole, the thing this entire telling has been walking toward. The betrayal that broke the Golden Order was not the work of an outside enemy, or a monster, or a hateful villain bent on destruction. It was the work of a woman who wanted only to be free. Ranni did not set out to break the world. She set out to escape it. Breaking it was the price, the necessary means, the collateral of an escape that could be accomplished no other way. The greatest wound in this world's history was inflicted not out of malice, but out of a longing for freedom so complete that it was willing to spend anything, a prince, a body, a wolf, a giant, an age, to purchase itself. That is the maddening and heartbreaking truth at the center of it. The world was broken by someone who was, in the deepest sense, only trying to get out. Gather the loyal ones one last time and mourn them properly, because they are the ones the story asks you to remember. The prince who served an order that could not keep him safe and whose death would not even let him rest. The wolf who loved a mistress he was fated to become a danger to, howling at the cold moon as the doom rose in him. The giant who guarded by choice and died at his post, having asked for nothing. The finger readers who blinded themselves for a god that may have already left. The assassins drawn from a discarded people, carrying the Order's own hidden death in their hands. Every one of them gave their loyalty, their service, their lives, to systems and to people that could not, in the end, honor what they gave. This is the truest and heaviest thing this world keeps teaching. The most tragic figures are not the villains. They are the faithful, the devoted, the ones who kept their loyalty to the very end and received, for it, nothing but the chance to be spent. Ranni spent them. The world spent them. And they gave themselves anyway, and that giving is the most human thing in the whole cold story. Through all of it, the gods did not care. Say it plainly, one last time, because Ranni's story proves it more completely than almost any other. The greater will chose Ranni, assigned her a fate set keepers upon her. And when she killed her own body and slew her own finger and walked out of the cage entirely, it did not grieve, or rage, or reach for her. It simply lost a vessel and went on. No god descended to save the prince, or the wolf, or the giant. No god intervened to prevent the theft of death, or to mend the wound the night opened, or to comfort the broken queen of the full moon. The gods of this world are real, and their power is real, and not one of them cares about any single person caught in their design. Ranni understood that more clearly than anyone, and her whole rebellion was, in a sense, the only sane response to it. The refusal to keep loving a power that would never love her back, and the decision to take the world out of that power's cold and indifferent reach. So was Ranni right? The story will not tell you, and neither will I, because the honest answer is that it cannot be settled. She was right that the cage was real, and right that the gods did not care, and right that freedom was worth wanting. And she was willing to break the world and spend the faithful to get it. And that willingness is a real and heavy thing that no amount of being right about the cage can simply erase. Both truths live in her, cold and complete, and the story holds them both and judges neither and asks you to do the same. That is not the story failing to reach a verdict. It is the story being honest that some verdicts cannot be reached, that a person can be a liberator and a betrayer in the same breath, that the same night can be the birth of freedom and the death of a world. Ranni is all of it at once. Hold her the way the story holds her, without resolving her, and you will have understood something true not only about her, but about every hard and necessary and terrible thing anyone has ever done to be free. Sleep well. When we return one final time, there will be only the quiet and the slow letting go and the gentle end of a long night. Chapter 18, Sleep Coda. Welcome back. Settle in. This is the last of it now, and it will be gentle and brief, and then there will be only rest. Let your body grow heavy. The pillow beneath your head, the blanket over you, the soft, familiar dark of your own room holding you close. You are not a vessel for anyone tonight. You belong only to yourself. The witch is far away in her cold new world beneath the stars. She has what she wanted. Let her have it and let her go. There is no fate fastened to you tonight, no leash, no design pressing on you in the dark. You are simply here, and warm, and free in the small, ordinary way that matters most. Free to close your eyes and rest. Ranni gave up warmth to be free. You do not have to. You get to keep both tonight, the freedom of having nothing to do, and the warmth of your own bed. At the same time, the knives are long put away. The night they belong to is centuries gone. None of it can reach you here. Thank you for staying with me through all of it, the cage and the escape and the long cold price of being free. It means more than you know that you would spend a night like this here, with me, in the quiet. Let the words go now. You do not need to keep any of them. They were only here to keep you company while you drifted. The moon is cold and far. Your room is warm and near. Stay in the warm one tonight. There is nowhere else you need to be. Rest. Sleep well. Sleep well. There is nothing left to carry. Rest now.